Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar to discuss the project findings and the strategy plan proposed for the attraction, retention and development of a skilled workforce for the Australian nursery industry. My name is Clinton Muller. I work with RM Consulting Group, and we've been exploring this issue in partnership with the Nursery and Garden Industry Australia. And we've also got CEO Peter Vaughan, who joins me on the line for this discussion this morning. This project has been funded by the Nursery Levy Fund with co-contribution from the Australian Government through Hort Innovation. We've got a very short 30 minutes with you today to run through the key findings and recommendations that have emerged from this study, which is to support a framework going forward to strengthen a skilled workforce for the Australian nursery industry. But before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping for those who may not have joined a webinar before in the past. Please note this discussion is being recorded and will be available later on the NGIA YouTube channel, so you can watch again for those who weren't able to join this session with us live today. For those who are joining us live though, I do encourage you to participate and welcome your questions and comments. This is really important for us through this study to help validate some of the key findings we've reached. You can easily ask a question at any time during the webinar by typing it into the question tab. You will have seen a handy GoToWebinar toolbar that should have popped up on your screen. Feel free just to type any questions into the question section there. But we're just going to dive straight into the discussion though. So I'm going to pass on to Peter to provide a bit of industry perspective from NGIA in relation to why this project is so important and timely for the industry.
Right, thanks Clinton, and good morning everyone and welcome to this webinar. And thanks for taking the time out of your day to join it. As Clinton indicated, this is a joint project between RM Consulting Group and NGIA. And it was an excellent partnership to establish with RM Consulting Group being the practitioners with the background, expertise and experience in careers, education, training and development activities for staff across a number of horticultural industries, and NGIA from being the peak industry body with the background and knowledge of the industry, and providing the links and networks to Clinton and his team to ensure that they could access the right resources in developing this strategy. The career pathways and having a stable workforce has been identified as a key issue for businesses in the nursery industry, and labour is vital for everything that we're doing to keep the industry thriving. And it really is thriving at the moment. The latest industry statistics that came out for the 17-18 financial year indicated that around 1.9 billion plants were sold with a value of 2.4 billion. And that has been an increase, and we've got year-on-year increases happening with production and sales of nursery stock, and to confirm that indication that the industry is thriving, 80% of businesses are very confident or optimistic about progressing forward with investments in infrastructure, intellectual technology, education and training activities. So the industry is thriving, but to keep it thriving, we need a trained, strong, stable and reliable workforce to keep the industry going. More than 85% of the workforce is 40 or older. There are approximately 25,000 full, part-time or casual employees. So over the next 20 years, there's going to be a large chunk of people in the workforce in the nursery industry that will need to be replaced. So that's why we're looking at different approaches to attract, developing and retaining staff to the nursery industry. So how does the project align to the Hort Innovation Strategic Plan? The career pathways is one of 5 key outcomes being looked at to come from the investments in R&D for the Hort Innovation Strategic Investment Plan. The 5 are statistics, communication, plant health and biosecurity, and productivity, which will hopefully lead to increased productivity and professionalism in the industry. And the 5th one, and given its own outcome, is career development, given the importance that has been placed on it by the nursery industry. This is the first project that has been commissioned to address this outcome. And I think what you'll find from the presentation from Clinton today, with the background and information that he has gathered, that that it really is a confirmation of the challenges that we face across the industry, and then the opportunities that have been identified. The strategy is in the final stages of being developed, and so the next stages will be for that strategy to be provided to Hort Innovation for review and then implementation. So I'll throw back to you now, Clinton, but just to reiterate, how important this project has been for the industry.
Great. Look, thanks for that, Peter. And Peter will be available on hand throughout this webinar to answer any particular questions that do emerge. And it has been great to have this collaboration with the industry to make sure it is targeted and meets the needs of the industry. What I want to run us through today is a bit of a journey about the challenges at hand through attracting, retaining and developing a skilled workforce for the nursery sector. What I just want to do a bit of a snapshot about where we're at a country level and a little bit of context about the study that we undertook, but look at what's currently happening, but where we're proposing some recommendations as well as part of the strategy being developed. And I guess this slide up here is a really nice snapshot about what the current status of play is across all horticulture sectors and agriculture in Australia. And really important to note, this is not a unique issue to the nursery sector, but there are some key comparative advantages we want to explore that position the nursery industry in a good footing. Probably the big one, and I'll talk about this about the current status of play, is the low number of people who are attracting specific agriculture and horticulture qualifications, both at a vocational education and training level, but also through tertiary sector as well. We also observe a lot of competition in the labour marketplace in comparison to comparable skill-based sectors. So particularly mining and coal seam gas sectors pick up a lot of potential workers that we might be able to attract to agriculture or horticulture sectors. We do have a lot of challenges as well about the promotion of the industry as an employer of choice and perceptions or that exist within the media landscape. And also particularly unique to the nursery sector is a challenge of the small to medium enterprises and the need for multidisciplined skill sets, but also limited scope for career progression for potential employees. Seasonal and casual nature of the work, but also this broader industry image and employment conditions, which of course also includes remuneration, also creates challenges, and also an observed challenge with disinterest of local unskilled labour to actually work in horticulture. So what does this mean? And I've got up here a couple of snapshots of some of the nursery statistics that Peter just mentioned about, but it's really important to refer to horticulture as no longer being just about market gardens. And there's a business complexity that exists that hasn't happened over the last 20 years, and that we really need to be concerned about all aspects of the supply chain at the production gate. But also recognition that to be internationally competitive, the industry really does need to attract the best and educated people and secure a strong pipeline for future staff to engage in the sector. And with these statistics, I really just want to hone on to two key points that start to emerge out. One is the imbalance in gender representation in the workforce, but this other point that Peter mentioned about only 15% of the industry being below the age of 40 years. And if you look at those other stats a little bit carefully, that also shows that 35% of the workforce is approaching retirement ages of above 60 years. So this is a challenge not just for the current status, but definitely going forward about a potential lost generation within the workforce. One important aspect too, before we delve into too much further, is how are we actually defining skills? So this has been a key focus about skilled versus unskilled or semi-skilled positions within the business. And we've adopted a bit of a framework that has been developed by Melbourne University and Agriculture Victoria in another project that those guys did about looking at the doer level. So these are positions on the farm, what you normally attribute to labour roles, about doing, documenting, some level of supervision, but more the decider roles involving a high level of skill sets. So this is where they're involved in roles such as planning, deciding, supervising staff, but doing coordination of in-nursery activities. What's really important to consider too as the entry pathway is definitely a possibility to recruit from within and to create those skilled positions from existing semi-skilled labour, so either through internal training and promotions, and that's something that's definitely been explored across the nursery sector. So what have we done as part of this study? And I just want to give a bit of a snapshot that this is something we haven't sat in an office and thought, look, this is the direction forward for the industry, but we have gone out to the industry quite extensively. We've done a review of the existing status of play through a desktop review. We spoke a lot to those in the know through a series of key informant interviews and provided the broader industry with an opportunity to have a say as well through an online survey. We did a bit of a pub test of our findings as well in an industry workshop just to make sure that we're on track, and also did a bit more validation and direction through a presentation to the nursery SIAP. And I think quite importantly as well, we've also been testing this with fresh graduates to make sure our understanding and appreciation of the new generation of workforce have met their needs through this program. So I just want to have a little look at the current situation, and it's a great place when we're talking about skilled workers to make sure we're focused on the education and training landscape. And I want to be really clear that there are courses available for production and retail nursery training, so right across the supply chain. And we've just got a snapshot here of some of the vocational education training and tertiary qualifications on offer. So it's really important to highlight that there is existing courses and training available to upskill a workforce. But the challenge comes into how we attract students into the course. So this is quite a handy graph that's been put together by Jim Prattley from Charles Sturt University. And it's in relation to horticulture graduates from all institutions across Australia. So keep in mind, this is not just nursery specific, but all horticulture sectors. And what's quite declining is that trend, what's quite alarming is that trend of decline over time. So this data is between 2001 and 2015. So you can see that gradually, turning down in numbers, but particularly if you're able to see on your screen that y-axis, the reality is we're looking at very low numbers back in 2001 of just about 130 graduates per annum, and now we're sitting below 40 graduates in 2015, according to this data. So what this highlights to us is a bit of a concern around, obviously, we've got a decline in the number of graduates, but it's also a limited pool to begin with. And if we break that down across all horticulture sectors, we're a bit of a challenge ahead about who's available to come into the industry. We see very similar results from the vocational education training as well. The number is a bit stronger, but when we're looking at the broad set of skills, we wanted to pick up all aspects of the training education. So having a look at what some of the current strategies are around, particularly the attraction aspect, we've got to be, I guess, quite honest here that there is limited activities. And this is particularly highlighted given the challenge, as I referred to earlier, about the high competition from a limited pool of potential employees who do show interest in working and engaging with the agriculture sector. There are some good examples though around school-based exposure programs. So there's the Kids Grow example here, which is run through NGIA, and there are some good state-by-state activities as well. There's also some good evidence amongst individual employers about work placement and rotation programs within the nursery industry. And the industry associations do a fair job at advertising the job opportunities within their state. But whether these are actually promoted or not is a question. One thing that we do often look at, how do we promote jobs, is a career pathway. And this is an example here from Melbourne Polytechnic TAFE. And it's a very linear career pathway that's not very robust at all, but very directional. We've also got to remember though that there are some real comparative strengths, so as I mentioned, for the nursery sector that could be explored, and geographic location and proximity to metropolitan areas is a really good strength, that we're not out in regional and remote areas all the time, but also the non-seasonal employment, so the opportunity for year-round workforce recruitment and job security. What I would suggest though is this challenge that is existing within the attitudes of the industry. So I've put up here a little graph that we collected from some of the online survey data, and this is a very low sample number. It's just below 30 respondents. But this graph does highlight this challenge we have within the industry about opportunities to look externally for new staff. So what it highlights is that when recruiting skilled staff, there's a huge favour towards recruiting staff who have existing experience or poaching within the from other businesses, rather than building capacity of potential new entrants. But it also does highlight a lack of direct interest in formal qualifications. So the value placed on tertiary or vocational education training is not as high as some would perceive to be coming into a study like this. The other aspect I want to consider is some of the current retention strategies, and I alluded to it earlier around the challenges with the small to medium enterprises. So this is a huge challenge for opportunities for career progression and for employees to identify clear career pathways through businesses. Elephant in the room that we've got to touch on is wage conditions. And this graph is from the Australian Government's Job Outlooks. It's some 2019 data, and it picks up on unskilled labour specifically when it looks at garden and nursery labourers. So while this is not the core audience we're focused at through this study, we've got to be aware of the broader perception and image information like this has at attracting potential higher skilled positions into the industry. We've also got some challenges around that broader industry image. So some things that came up quite a bit through our consultation was aspects of only employing the reject pool, so people who weren't able to engage and work in other mainstream sectors, and a comment that the industry is seen to be quite feminine compared to other industries as well. Something that came up around the existing challenges with soft skills were poor people management skills, and that potentially can also contribute to low retention of existing staff due to supervisory capacity. And again, also the competition from other comparative skill sectors that do pay a higher wage. In the development space, there are some really good examples of industry programs that provide good development opportunities. So the Hort Innovation Green Industry Growing Leaders is a great example. And there's an example here of a individual business who has partnered with local TAFE to provide training. However, with a lack of numbers, we do have a lack of capacity, quality and currency of teaching staff in a lot of training institutions, and also issues around availability and accessibility of these institutions. So this is something particularly noted in metropolitan areas. The example of Richmond TAFE in Sydney was provided several times about poor accessibility for students across nurseries to access TAFE for training opportunities. One thing that was a real strength for the sector though was the importance of networking and shared ideas, and this was seen by supporting staff for training, knowledge exchange, conferences and study tours, and also in-house training and promotion. So what's the summary and the takeaway messages of these key findings? I think the important one to lay out up front that there is a shortage of skilled labour, and this is particularly at a supervisory level. This challenge going forward of the industry having lost a generation of workforce with 85% of the workforce over 40 years of age. We do definitely see employer preference for good work ethic and demonstrated past experience, but also some strengths around that recognition and importance of shared learning and networks. Key skill gaps are really focused on that people development, so the soft skills rather than necessarily the technical. I would add though, there is broad recognition that those technical is critical to future business viability, but a lot of businesses chose to provide that technical training in-house. Biggest barriers are of course around remuneration and employment conditions, but also this issue around limited opportunities for career growth and progression were also picked up. So I guess probably the crux of our chat this morning is about what do we propose or what have we found that might be able to support to address this, and what we're going to be recommending as part of the strategy is a 5-pillared approach. It's really important to note a caveat around this is not a silver bullet. This really does require a systematic and collaborative approach to delivery, and requires everyone across the industry to be on board. And this is particularly important about promoting a positive outlook for the industry. I do really want to stress that this is not a quick fix. It's a journey to go through to address the challenges and problems that have been created by a number of years of limited attention in this space. So when we break down the pillars that we're looking at, the first one is around industry promotion and awareness. And one of the big strengths about the nursery sector is some of the great existing initiatives and established brands in place. A really great example is the Vision 2020 initiative and opportunities to link career opportunities for skilled workers to those programs. And we also have focused on a bit of a thing we call active and also passive promotion. So active promotion can involve taking advantage on existing events and activities. So the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show the other week is a great example of a really high profile event, but also a great schools program. So in Victoria, the NGIV Victoria Schools Gardens Awards is a great example of how do we capitalise on existing initiatives to help promote career opportunities within the industry. The subset of that is the passive awareness. So how do we create a greater baseline understanding of the opportunities that exist? And I've included here an example from Carpentry Australia with their hashtag Proud Chippy. initiative. So they've got over 100,000 followers on this Instagram account, which really creates an emotive opportunity for career development through a trade in that sector. The next example is around the importance of policy parameters, and this is particularly relevant to support for policy and advocacy work. So this includes the prioritisation of funded training positions. So there's an example in Victoria at the present with the recent free TAFE training placements having included a certificate 2 in production nursery. So those opportunities for funded placements for skills and training, but also promoting how valuable the industry is. And Peter alluded to this earlier through the nursery industry data and statistics collection project. The green life sector is now a $2.4 billion sector, and that's definitely some value to demonstrate good data and good statistics about the importance of the industry across all of production horticulture. There was other advocacy work that we learned through the consultation process as well, which is quite interesting. So a good example is provided for the challenges of nursery businesses located in metropolitan areas, being able to access support through some of the Commonwealth Migratory Worker programs. So there was a challenge and a restriction here based on postcodes to being able to access into these markets. The next area is around the training system, so both the formal and informal. And we've taken on board the feedback in relation to the appropriateness of the training packages that we received from the industry. So there's an area here to work with agencies like Skills Impact to ensure the targeted content of the training packages. I think also more importantly, the delivery mechanism. So on site within businesses, particularly given the current lack of investment in nursery sector training provisions within some of the TAFEs across the country. So this also requires some level of support from the industry to promote the training programs to potential interested students. So we come across this common misconception that it's TAFE's responsibility to promote training courses, but the reality is TAFE system looks to industry to promote their courses. So this is really important that that partnership and collaboration is in place. And also need to ensure that ongoing support for the leadership and knowledge exchange initiatives. So through the consultation process, again, one of the key strengths of the nursery sector was the value placed on knowledge exchange and peer-to-peer learning and networking, and what those new ideas and innovations bring back to businesses. One important area, particularly focused on the retention strategies, is the need to support a bit of a paradigm shift to better understand what the new generation of workers expect from their workplace. Surprisingly, it's not just about pay, but it's important to also know that pay is a consideration. So one thing that's quite interesting and emerging is this new millennial or the Instagram generation. Particularly, they seek constant feedback, both positive and constructive. So this can be quite a challenge for some businesses to understand what the changing market expectations of the labour market is. There's some great comparable examples from other primary industries. So the dairy industry has taken a great lead through their ESCI package, an online employment hub of resources. So ESCI being the Employment Starter Kit initiative, and just got a link on the screen up there to their homepage, but it's a very worthwhile resource to check out for some more information about how to have good strategies for employment. The final area that we're focused on is the defined job and career pathway. And this is back to an original core focus of the project. And again, we look to other good industry examples, and I don't pick on the dairy industry, I highlight them again for having a really great initiative through their Stepping Stones program. And they've developed this fantastic dynamic career pathway and promotion program that they roll out through schools and other initiatives. And it's a really solid program that provides great examples of the delineation between skilled and unskilled work opportunities within the sector. So the next steps from this levy funded project, so we're finalising a strategy that outlines all these activities within further detail, and we'll be providing some recommendations back to the industry on the implementation and delivery of this program. But we do anticipate that this will require some level of coordinated delivery through industry to ensure it gets the focus and attention it requires, but also important to ensure that there is implementation from a partnership perspective. And this, of course, will require some resourcing, so looking to recommend some support through the nursery R&D levy. What we also propose is, given the changing nature of the industry, it's really important to consider a triennial review process just to make sure that the employment market changes are picked up and addressed. So that was a very quick snapshot. to run through the presentation, but I would really encourage any questions that might be on the line to feel free to jot them down within the question section, and Peter might run through those questions with us.
Okay, thanks, Clinton. We've got the opening question is, can we please have copies of the slideshow? And of course, that'll be made available. We will ensure that that a link will be provided through the comms program. And as Clinton indicated earlier, this webinar will be placed on the NJA YouTube channel. So if you or your staff or anyone else would like to view it, can certainly view it there. So if any other questions, please keep them coming through. It's only the one at this stage, Clinton. But,
that's all right.
Yeah, just from your point of view, how does this compare to other industries? Because I know RMCG have done work across vegetables and other horticultural industries. How severe or how concerning is the issue around attracting, developing, retaining staff compared to other, say, hort or agricultural industries?
Look, I think it's important to try and create an opportunistic outlook on this situation. I think there's some real comparative strengths, as I referred to, for the nursery sector. The reality is it's a tough game out there for all agriculture, and we are competing in a very limited pool. Both the training sector, but also internal training, promotion of the industry as a positive limelight. It's a big challenge going forward. We see a lot of industries, and the nursery is no exemption to this, having to adopt more of innovative production processes. So looking at automation, robotics, efficiencies across the supply chain to address skills gaps, and also availability of staff. But this is a universal problem. But again, I do stress there are some real comparative strengths to the nursery industry that put you in a better limelight position.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm just getting a couple of questions and comments. So here's a comment, Clinton. We have found that internal training works very well. However, our staff have known more than the trainers. How do training organisations attract good trainers? That is a very good comment.
It is a great comment. And I guess the quick response to the comment is they attract good trainers by having good numbers of students. And this is a real challenge, is that why the outlook for formal training is limited at the present is because we don't have the capacity and skills of training staff. Technologies have evolved. A lot of businesses have far greater systems and operations in place than can be offered through some of the training providers. What I would stress, though, is businesses that we did talk to noted this challenge, but still recognised value within the training system, particularly for two main reasons. The first reason is a bit of a self-reflection for individuals to be valued, and valued through financial support and investment in certified training and getting a certificate from that. The second one, though, is also this peer-to-peer knowledge exchange and recognition that the industry needs to be networked. It's a small industry, but a high-value industry, and how important it is to have good collaboration and network across the industry, and that's provided through avenues such as formal training. This forms part of our other recommendation, though, about the leadership and knowledge exchange and partnership opportunities. So looking at domestic and international study tours is a good way to build those bonds and strengths as well.
Yep, good. No other questions or comments at this stage. I'll just comment quickly on, I think from the investment point of view, is that earlier I mentioned that the Career Pathways project is one of 5 outcomes that is trying to be derived from the Hort Innovation Strategic Investment Plan, and it does continue till 2021 when it will be revised, and I suspect that the Career Pathways project will continue past that. And I believe that there should be around a budget of 10% of the R&D budget allocated to this, and aspects of the marketing budget if we're going to promote the industry of an industry of choice for employment. And just looking at the R&D budget, it's in excess of $2 million at the moment. So all things being equal, over the next 2 sort of financial years, there should be $200,000 a year that get invested in this, which will hopefully provide a very good basis of resources to implementing this strategy.
Look, Peter, just another question that's just come through. It's tied into a couple of questions here about how do we educate those doing hiring, and particularly recognising the existing manager staff who don't necessarily have the formal qualifications and are part of the recruitment process. Look, I think that's a valid point, but it's also up to the industry to decide how important these sort of, formal training programs are. A lot of in-house training can be provided. So provided the business is comfortable with its direction and its technical knowledge, a lot of these issues can be addressed in-house. There's also some strengths with attracting different workforces where people want to see a clear career progression and circumnavigate any training. So there's some opportunities there. So it's a mixed strategy approach, but I think coming up over the next decade for the sector and looking at the numbers of the existing workforce composition, there are challenges going forward around who is available to pick up the slack as existing workforce moves on. So Peter, we've just
there is just one more question. So I think how do we educate those doing the hiring, Clinton? And I think your fourth pillar in the strategy probably addresses that pretty well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think these are some really good comments and questions are coming through now. There's another one around providing guidance around apprenticeships and how do we attract them and where do we start? And that's an important aspect to be picked up in the human resource toolkit as well. So we've just hit the half hour, and I think it's really important just to value the time that we've said we would allocate for this discussion. But our contact details are up on the screen there. So if you do have any follow-up questions or comments or clarifications, please feel free to get in touch with either Peter or myself. We'd love to have some follow-up discussion with you in relation to this important study. But do really want to thank everyone who have been available to join us. As Peter mentioned and reiterated, this will be available on the NGA website, and the strategy will be available once it is finalised. But Peter, did you have any last points before we draw to a close?
Not particularly, Clinton, but just to thank you for all your work and involvement in the project. As I open, it's been a good partnership with the RMCG Consulting Group as the practitioners from a career education training point of view, and working with the nursery industry. It's been a good project to progress. So thank you, and thank you everyone for attending.
No worries. Absolute pleasure to work with the nursery industry. It has been a great fun one. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for your time today, and look forward to talking with you next time. Cheers.
Thank you.